I think you just be yourself. Everybody has that part of them that people like and want to associate themselves with. So you just sort of let yourself be goofy and jokes and not be too serious all the time. And it's always your balance, right? Like, what is your culture? You may already be predisposed to that, so you're already doing it. But for me, I had to, again, it was part of the step process, is that I needed to realize that I'm very serious and I'm perceived as very serious and intense. So to let some steam off from time to time is really good and healthy.
Welcome to Grow Think Tank. This is the one and only place where you will get insight from the founders and the CEOs of the fastest growing privately held companies. I am the host. My name is Gene Hammett. I help leaders and their teams navigate the defining moments of their growth. Are you ready to grow? How transparent is your organization? Transparency takes a lot of courage. You as a leader, if you have the ability to be more transparent with your employees, you can create more of a connection. They crave being included. They crave being inside this. This doesn't mean you have to have open book management, but it helps. It doesn't mean you have to, open up everything, but it helps. But what you do have to do to have transparency is be really honest. Invite them to give you feedback. Invite them to truly share with you what's on their mind. And both of you have to be willing to be transparent, you and the employees. Now, transparency is a really hot topic these days. It's one of the hot buzzwords, if you will. It's one of my number one articles on Inc. magazine. If you Googled radical transparency, you would be able to see it. But I talk about transparency today because I want you to be a transparent leader. Transparent leadership is one who has the courage to be open and be honest and be able to take that feedback in. I wanted to find someone in my network that had the ability to talk about this with you. We found Adam LaBarbera. He is the founder of EETechMedia, and Adam really talks about his journey of leadership and some of the ups and downs and how he found out his way to being a transparent leader, creating transparency throughout the organization. So we're going to talk about that in today's episode, but I'd love for you to tune in to other episodes. So make sure you subscribe and make sure you continue to listen in and use the information that are in the interviews and the solo episodes behind the scenes to be a better leader, to evolve. Now, let's get ready to listen to the interview with Adam. Hi, Adam. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Excited to have you here at Growth Think Tank.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I've already let our audience know a little bit about you as a leader, but tell us a little bit about EETechMedia.
So EETechMedia is a media company that focuses on the electrical engineering industry, which might sound like consumer electronics, but we're working with component manufacturers to help market their products to engineers. So for example, a customer of ours might be a brand like Intel and trying to reach an engineer at Apple who's going to make like an iPhone or something like that.
And you have about 60 employees or so?
Yeah, 60 globally.
And you're pretty young, so leadership is something, is it come natural to you or is it something that you've had to work on?
I think based on my personality type, I always kind of gravitated towards wanting to lead the charge, for better or for worse. So I think in sports, for sure, I was captain of teams that I was on, or at least I pushed to lead them. And then I coached some youth programs and stuff like that. I think once you realize that it's something you like to do, you then gravitate towards do more of it and learning. So I think it's a little bit of both.
Well, we talked a little bit about your fast growth journey a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about this and preparing for today's interview. Give us a little bit of the journey you've been on, just high level. You were number 301 on Inc. list. What else would you like to kind of say to the audience about growth?
There's a lot of hard work that goes into it. I think you get lucky sometimes. You have your opportunities that could go either way. You're in a meeting, you have a big sale that you're trying to make. You don't even maybe know what the differentiator was to get it. And I kind of call that luck, right? It could have gone either way. So for me, there's these things that happen and you try to predict and you try to plan for them, set yourself up, but you have these 50-50 chances and you hope you get enough of them to go your way.
Well, we're going to talk about, finding your leadership style and really about finding a sequence that unlocks a leadership style. So what does that mean when finding your sequence?
So it's kind of something that I identified in myself. For me, it was like the steps I took to push my personal growth and to focus on. So I think for everyone, it's going to be a little bit different, but I can at least say what it was for me and how I went about it. But it's understanding yourself, right? It's finding your weaknesses and strengths, filtering them out, and then focusing on each one in the right way.
So let's unpack that a little bit. What steps did you take to understand this sequence of leadership style?
For one, is just like the need to be better. And so as consciousness for me, it was just having a conscious effort to see my environment, how I was interacting with people, and what the results were. Almost as though you were calling it data inputs and things of that nature.
Hold on for a second. Adam just talked about the need to be better. When you're a leader, you really need to evolve consistently. You need to push yourself, not just by reading books, but by talking with people, having the right mentors, having the right coaches. Your evolution doesn't happen just by happenstance. It happens with intention. How intentional are you about being the leader that you need to be? Now back to Adam. Well, that's a start. What do you do after that?
Right. So once you become conscious of these things, you're going to discover, you discover things about your environment, maybe prior to leading a company, So I think for me, like an example was my family, a pretty risk adverse family. And then you get to a point where you see that and you say, okay, maybe I take a little bit more risk because I know I have an affinity to being that way. Maybe that's limiting me. So you start to use that discovery phase to point out these things that might not necessarily be like a hard weakness, but definitely something that might hold you back.
Is there anything specifically that you did in there that you would say helped you find what you in that discovery process?
I think you have to have humility ultimately. If you're not willing to point out the things that are a problem, I think you miss out on a lot of opportunity to grow. So I think humility is probably the biggest one, and then remaining mindful of those things that were incorrect. You just kind of work on them, right? It's not like a light switch on and off. It's sort of, there's a progression.
Now, I want to ask you this because you mentioned in electrical engineering. I don't know if I shared this with you, but the audience probably doesn't know, but I got a degree in industrial engineering, which is the easiest of all the engineering. Everyone makes fun of the industrial engineers. I'm sure you probably have. Right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think it's funny because we just moved into the market for automation control engineering. So it's similar to industrial, depending on what you're in. But yeah, I think the one that maybe gets the most grief is maybe civil engineering. I'm not sure, but yeah, we are.
Well, industrial engineering was the easiest course of action for me when I was at Georgia Tech, and that was what I chose. But it actually fit really well with me. But there was a lot of technical aspects, and the reason I ask you that behind this is technical probably comes natural to you, but it's connecting with others in your leadership style. Is it a natural thing for you?
Not really. I would say for me, I'm really intense and very serious. And when I'm at work, it's very much a go mentality. I think if you're not filtering the human side of working with a lot of people, then it can become kind of a stark difference in attitude, right? Everyone that's working for you is becoming close with each other. They're developing friendships. And if you've ever been an employee of a company, you've been a part of that. As a leader, you have to walk this line of how friendly you are. I think at first you assume a lot, like you have to be very serious all the time and perhaps quite stiff. And then you see that as maybe even limiting. That's what I noticed, was that it would limit me and how I could interact and what I could get out of people. So you start to build a little bit of a friendship, a connection, and I think it just makes you more human and approachable.
So what have you done in your leadership style to make sure that you're in tune with the humanity of leadership?
I think you just be yourself. Everybody has that part of them that people like and want to associate themselves with. So you just sort of let yourself be goofy and jokes and not be too serious all the time. And it's always your balance, right? Like, what is your culture? You may already be predisposed to that, so you're already doing it. But for me, I had to, again, it was part of the step process, is that I needed to realize that I'm very serious and I'm perceived as very serious and intense. So to let some steam off from time to time is really good and healthy.
Well, do you believe in leading by example inside of your company?
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think, and I've seen it both ways, right? The leader who leaves people to be really autonomous and do everything to themselves. And so what they end up doing is maybe culturally they don't show up to the office very often, or they're traveling a lot. To lead by example is to be there and to be in front. And so I made that a really conscious decision to not travel quite as much as I could or maybe want to be here to, to show the work ethic, to push. We're a very young company, very young people in the company. And so I think you're kind of, everyone's still training really hard to go pro, to go to the big leagues.
Let's take a break. Adam just talked about leading by example. We've heard this in leadership and we know how important it is, but really, are you leading by example? Are you being as courageous as you need to be inside your leadership? Are you confronting the employees like you really need to be? Are you having difficult conversations to grow the business? Are you making difficult decisions? Are you being as courageous as you need to be? I talk to a lot of fast growth leaders, and here's the reality. Even though their sales are soaring, their courage could use some work. And I say that with a smile because I really want you to understand that being a courageous leader is not just something I say at the end of the podcast when I say lead with courage. It is what I truly believe. It is the really small thing that you can focus on to really lift amazing amount of work and really engage people. Have the courage to say what needs to be said, to do what needs to be done, spend the money and invest wisely in yourself and in the company. What else did you do to find your sequence of leadership style beyond discovery?
I can't say that there's a whole lot more that I haven't already said. It's really, for me, it's transparency and there's honesty and empathy that goes with that. I think those are things that other experts have been talking about for a long time, and not to say that I'm an expert on all of these things, but at least from what I've learned about myself, those have been really big change points for me and benefits to filter in the transparency, the honesty, to be empathetic, understanding when somebody's, when they're late or they're late on a deadline, it's understanding why, deducing what maybe made their project fall apart. We tell people, for one, when you make mistakes, you're almost more valuable now than you were before you made the mistake. And it gives people a sense of confidence that they can take chances and do things differently, that they're not going to their job's not going to be threatened, their livelihood's not at risk.
So there's two things in there I want to unpack. One is the transparency and the other one's making mistakes. So how far do you go in having transparency? Is it open books? Is it beyond open books and something else?
Right. Totally. I think, so open book would be pretty severe. I think that's really sensitive information. We talk about sales a lot. We talk about our goals. It's no secret in terms of the people who do earn the most in the company. But we treat everyone with a lot of respect in terms of what they should know. We actually just had kind of like a town hall meeting yesterday in the office talking about where we're going, what management is thinking about acquiring in terms of assets or markets we're going to be in. And there's people who really don't even need to know those things, but we want everyone to know that they're a part of it. We want to hear their ideas, and maybe they've seen something that we're not. So we're very transparent about strategy, what we're thinking, even if it's ugly. I think that's probably the most important thing, is if we're talking about certain assets we might do completely different directions with, and we want them to know it's not their fault. It's they've worked really hard on it, and management's just seeing it differently, and in sort of in a defense of management, right? You're going to have new data come in, and you're going to have to change and make up your mind one way or another. So we're just trying to be honest about even we make mistakes, but to not give up, sort of thing.
It takes a lot of courage to have real transparency with your team, and to talk about mistakes actually can be a benefit. Have you seen that across the culture?
Yeah, I think if anyone, again, if you're ever in a business and you're working for someone and it's been difficult to talk about a mistake. It's just, you can see, how are you going to get to the truth? How are you going to get to the better idea, the better solution? We don't want to spend time putting out fires. So we don't let them get to be that big. And so you start having transparency, and you hear there's always going to be, a bit of recourse. So it's never going to be perfect, but yeah, it's been a benefit for sure. And I don't think that's really on purpose. It's just the style that we've taken.
When you mentioned too about mistakes, about being okay with it, I find that fast growth companies have more of a tendency to be okay with mistakes, failures, and things like that we're learning from, that we're moving forward because of. Bigger companies resist that. People in those jobs, like, they don't want to take those chances because they feel like their job's at risk every time. How have you communicated that with your team?
Well, I mean, I think anyone who's been in a company, right, and you see these things happen. Well, for one, it's like I'm in a position of owning my company, right? I'm CEO and I own the company. So a lot of what I do and say is really going to happen, right? And if I don't take care of my people, who's going to, there's that cliche, who's going to take care of your customers and so on and so forth. But it's really true. Like, if you don't take care of your people, do you really want to go and hire a whole new group of people? Like, it's exhausting. Hiring is honestly, a huge waste of time. And it's really difficult. You want to take really good people and make them better, and you don't want to lose them. And so we find a way to keep people. Everything I'm saying is really logical to me. It doesn't sound like it's something I'm trying to be different. It's just, I don't have time to mess around. So when people have mistakes, you have to think about that. Like, someone's going to make a mistake. Now, there's a difference between making like an honest mistake and then make like a stupid one over and over again, right?
Sure.
We've had people who have been really problematic, and you have to deal with that accordingly. But I don't think every mistake is in that category. There's different levels. There's different levels of honesty and transparency with that stuff. So yeah, it's nothing we were like consciously doing on purpose, except for this sort of survival and the growth of the company to be smartest with our time.
So this whole conversation has really led to this transparent leadership. Has that led to like growth of the company? I mean, you guys were growing really fast. You have a lot of people. How does it truly fit into the growth of the company?
Yeah, for sure. You don't even really know, let me be honest, like, I don't even know that when I'm going into it. You think you have this big company mentality, you have to sort of fake it till you make it. So you're not necessarily transparent in the beginning. And then you start to push on that transparency and communication, and you see the results. There's some really good results that come out of it. So for one, yeah, transparency is pushed to growth because, for example, we're very truthful with our sales teams and what's coming, what we need to see. And we ask them to give us honesty. We ask for them for that in return, because we want to hear the bad. Like, we have to have that. We can't let something fester and destroy an aspect of the company that, oh my God, all of a sudden we see it and it's a huge disaster. So that for us is just kind of part of it. Yeah, it's always, I think, we're probably always going to point at that as one of the reasons we're successful.
Well, do you have any rituals that you have inside of your meetings and structure that kind of reinforce this aspects of transparency?
You try to, I think when you first start talking about it, you have a mic in front of you and a bunch of people are looking for you to inspire them, and you have an idea, and then I just stop. Honestly, I just start talking about what matters, what I've heard in conversations over a period, whatever the period of time is. And you just speak from the heart kind of thing. And it just comes naturally. I don't think, for me as a public speaker, I could read from a script and do a very good job. I think I have to say what's on my mind and what I'm observing. And it's just part of all of those other steps that, made that happen.
Well, Adam, I really appreciate you joining us here at the Growth Think Tank and sharing your journey of leadership in a fast growth company. Really appreciate sharing and talking about EETechMedia. Thank you for sharing your wisdom.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Gene. Appreciate it.
Wow, what a great interview. I really love the fact that he talked about transparency in a real way and talked about, the mistakes that he has and sharing the good and the ugly. The good is easy to share, right? But the ugly, people could be concerned about the health of the company, but they must know this and you must train them to be honest with you. I really believe this because our employees crave this level of honesty or transparency. And if you aren't doing it, then they will find someone else who will. Hopefully you're loving the interviews here at Growth Think Tank. Make sure you share this with someone that you know